Welcome to the Read Along,
a mini book club for your ears.
I'm your host, Scott.
I'm your other host, Anita.
And join us on a journey through a good book,
one chapter at a time.
Do you like talking about movies? Do you like talking about mediocre movies? Do you like talking about how you could have fixed mediocre movies? Well, I certainly do, and you can listen to me, Scott C. Bourgeois, along with my co-hosts Greg Beaver and Liam Creswick, as we give our notes, and I have some notes. You can follow it now on your podcatcher of choice, or support it by visiting patreon.com/IHaveSomeNotes. So we've come to the end of another book.
We did it.
We did.
Yay.
We continue to fulfill the remit of this podcast by successfully chapter by chaptering books. This is our 14th one.
Good for us.
The 13 Ways to Kill Lulabelle Rock, our 14th book.
Look, we didn't plan it like that.
No.
Or we would have done better.
But overall, not too bad. Shall we just get into it then?
Sure. Let's
We'll,
get all book clubby.
We'll get a little book clubby.
Do you, out there in listener land, do you have your wine? You got your snacks? Are you ready? I'm sure you have thoughts. We have thoughts.
Yeah, so we're going to share them now.
Ready, go. Start with a small disclaimer before we start getting into questions and answers.
Sure.
I could talk about this book in depth for many hours. We've only got like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So as much as I would love to get like deep into the overthinking weeds in this book, we cannot. So let's start with the basics. What was your favorite part?
I liked quite a lot of it, actually. One of my favorite parts was going to the party and meeting the party Lulabelle, because that's when things really started to like come together in the theme of the plot. I liked some of the awkward cuteness between 13 and the artist. Yeah, there's a lot to like in here.
I genuinely had to put some thought into this afternoon about what my favorite part was, and I have to say I don't have one.
You just kind of liked the whole thing?
I enjoyed this book as a whole. The entire thing. There was no part of this book that I strongly liked or strongly disliked. I just enjoyed it the whole time, the whole thing, which is unusual for me. Normally I have like, oh, this was my favorite part. I really enjoyed this. Or, ugh, this part was awful and tedious and I hated reading it. I didn't get that at all in this book. I enjoyed it equally the whole way through.
That's good.
This book was a delight to read.
It was a book for you.
It really was. So here we're gonna get a little deep, a little quick.
Okay.
We're gonna ask the question the book asked: is it really narcissism to love a different version of yourself?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Because they're not the same person at the end of the day.
It's true, because the second they were made, they were a split.
Yeah.
Right?
And they've had different experiences. The artist is older than 13.
But considerably.
Their experiences, even just over the last 3 days, have shaped them differently. And they're not the same person. They might look the same, but they're not the same person. That's one of the things that actually attracts one to the other, is that despite the fact that they are both based off of the Lulabelle template, and despite the fact that they both look fundamentally the same, obviously at this point they look a little different.
Yeah.
They just on a fundamental level have different likes and different tastes. And that's interesting because, again, the artist has been active for a while. And 13 has only forked off of the base Lulabelle 3 days ago, but already has very distinct tastes and likes and opinions about stuff that diverge from the original Lulabelle, that are very different from the artist. And it just goes to show that they are different people.
Yeah. If you want to get really super duper deep on it, it's almost like a weird description of humanity, that while humans are all the same, being humans, we're all so varied and so different, right? And immediately being shaped and constantly changing by our experiences and our environments. So the fact that these two quote unquote people
Well, I mean, they're not legally people,
in
but
the
they are
book, they're not
definitely
legally
people.
technically human, but they're absolutely people. Even though they sprung from like a very specific and exact offshoot,
Mhm.
how different they become is so wonderfully human of them.
Yeah.
You know?
Our experiences fundamentally shape who we are.
Absolutely.
There's something to be said about nurture being, in many ways, more important than nature.
But then again, with the strength of one's nature underneath it, because 13 cannot help herself, right? She has that desire to fulfill her purpose. I'm using a lot of air quotes so that no one can see. You know what I mean, right? And that nature is so strong underneath, but the nurture still overcomes it in the end, right? Because the artist gets to talk her out of it. It's a very heavy-handed metaphor in this book,
Well,
but I love the exploration of it.
And it's also growing beyond her programming, right?
Yeah.
Which is part of it as well.
All right.
And it only takes her 3 days to do it. Like, it doesn't even take that long.
To be fair, she springs as like a fully formed adult.
Yeah.
As opposed to a child who has to go the long way.
Plus, I mean, her circumstances are exceptional because she got to interact with all these other iterations of herself through this whole adventure. And that gave her an existential crisis almost from hop, actually.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
It's true.
So she's been introspective through the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even when she didn't maybe cognizantly recognize that she was being introspective, because she's kind of interacting with different facets of herself.
Yeah.
And that shapes her in some ways faster than, say, the artist spending the first 2 months of her life huddled alone in her apartment, unable to do anything out of just stark fear.
Yeah, not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a left turn. I want to talk about Spencer.
Okay.
Just briefly, because I feel it's worth a short discussion. What was up with Spencer? Because let's take a step back and look at it. It's one thing for him to want to keep his, for lack of a better term, his cash cow around, right? It's quite another to keep a version of her as his secretary.
Spencer is very much like patriarchy.
Kind of, yeah. Like a fun mix of patriarchy and capitalism.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I mean mitosis is a little bit mixed in with capitalism too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But for Spencer, it's not just a matter of peddling Lulabelle. It's also, to an extent, about possessing Lulabelle, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it's so much deeper and further than she is my best client.
Yes.
You know?
So more like she is my product and she belongs to me.
Right? There's this gross darkness to it.
There's definitely a possessiveness there, which is why I think he wanted his own copy and why I think he was really kind of torn up about losing it, and also why he was looking for the original Lulabelle to make more copies.
Yeah. Even at the expense of the
original Lulabelle. Yeah.
Yeah, he would rather have like a sick copy than a healthy one if it meant having a copy versus not.
And I firmly believe, and this is totally headcanon because it's not explicit in the book, that he could have cut a deal with mitosis to smooth things over so that Lulabelle never died. Wink. Even though legally all of the portraits are supposed to be shut down because Lulabelle is too big to fail.
Yeah.
She's too big in industry.
At least in Spencer's mind.
Yeah. But, I mean, we don't know what's up with mitosis. We only got glimpses of them throughout, right? But
we never did find out what happened to Belle.
She was taken in.
That's all we know.
That is all we know. Also, like, the engineer was very business. The lawyer was very business. Neither of them really treated any of the Lulabelles with personhood or kindness.
Humanity.
They were products to them. They were out troubleshooting products.
Yeah. Because we identify these portraits as people, it felt a little gross.
Yeah, because we're in one of their heads and we get to see them.
And by the time we got to the end of the book, like reflecting back on the beginning, it just made it extra gross.
For sure.
Yeah, I felt Spencer is such an underlying thing in this book. At least to me he was. Right? You get warned about him at the beginning and then we meet him and then we have the phone call and then like he just kept coming back in the conversation.
Yeah.
So I felt it was worth noting. Spencer being kind of the grossness in this book. Well, not a grossness. Not the grossness.
To a certain extent, I feel like Lulabelle, not Prudence in the hospital, but Lulabelle Rock, the portrait who was told to be Lulabelle, is trying to slip his leash a little bit.
Yeah.
And one of the ways she's doing that is by eliminating all the other Lulabelles. Spencer did bring up that exclusivity is the new hotness. And I think to a certain extent, she doesn't want other Lulabelles around for Spencer to manipulate. She'd rather they all be decommissioned than one of them end up in his museum of living dolls, for example.
Yeah. I still hold to what I thought before when I was talking about the firstborn, that her programming, her instructions was so vague as to be extremely powerful and with the possibility of being taken to the extreme that it has right now. When she was told, be Lulabelle Rock, and now she is.
Yeah.
That's why she put all this into action.
But, I mean, also, you have to remember, she activated a lot of the other Lulabelles.
Yeah.
To do stuff that she was just too busy to deal with.
Yeah.
Also, it kind of explains why she hated Prudence so much. Not the one in the hospital, the one who was married.
Yes.
Because she was told, be Lulabelle Rock. And who's Lulabelle Rock going to hate the most? Prudence.
Prudence?
The person she left behind. The person she didn't want to be anymore. When she turned herself into Lulabelle Rock. So, of course, she hates Prudence with a burning passion.
That whole section was weird and petty.
Yeah, absolutely petty.
There's a lot of darkness in this book.
Oh,
but it's
100%.
Not, it's a beautiful darkness. It's not horrible.
You described the book as poetic.
It's very poetic.
And I think that touches on that.
These next two questions are almost the same one. Maybe, maybe not. It depends on how our conversation goes about it. So we get to the end, and the artist has been presented throughout this book as, again, air quotes, the worst at what she does. The art is always being described as bad, without outright saying it. Her poetry is considered bad.
She
Her
kind of
cooking is
outright says it.
Right.
Yeah.
Over and over again, we're being told that the artist is not good at whatever it is she's doing. But then by the time we get to the end, 13 all but says, you're the best of us, and you need to be the last Lulabelle standing. Why? That's what I want to explore. What is it about this objectively terrible portrait that makes her the best one?
Just because she's bad at the tasks that she set out to do doesn't mean that she's a bad person. Because you have to look at her actions. Number one, she's content in what she's doing. She's not beating herself up over the fact that she's not good at the piano, she's not good at poetry, she's not good at cooking.
Yeah.
She just takes a simple joy in it.
She's found this wonderful happiness in the trial of things.
Yeah.
Right? In the experimentation.
Also, she fully admits, knowing why 13 was there, the first night that they met, she was going to kill her. And she couldn't bring herself to do it. Because she's not that kind of person.
I know. Isn't that nice?
Kinda, yeah. And also, she warned the other portraits about 13, too, or as many of them as she could, because, again, she's a good person. She didn't want any harm to befall 13, but she didn't want any harm to befall any of the others either.
I know.
And 13 sees that in her. She sees her heart. She sees the core of her, and she recognizes that despite being another Lulabelle clone, she somehow has evolved into being like the best version of Lulabelle. One who's happy being who she is, who isn't putting on a facade, who isn't letting her singular focus in life rule her. In a way, she's kind of fledged into this wonderful person. And 13 feels deep down that that's the Lulabelle who deserves to live. Although the artist then makes the argument that really all of them deserve to live.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, many of them don't by that point.
No.
But the three who are left at the end, or the four if you include the original, 5 if Belle is still alive, we don't know.
We don't know.
They all deserve to live.
Well, yeah. We could spiral off into a whole separate conversation about whether or not clones are people. And in this book, they're certainly not human.
Yes.
But I think it's a very strong argument to say that they are definitely people.
Well, we spend the entire book in the perspective of one of them, and it's a very human perspective, the entire book.
Yeah.
So, yes, the portraits are people, even if legally they are not.
Even legally they are not human. They are absolutely people.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm total in agreement with you, by the way, about the artist and why she's so great. What do you think Maud Woolf was trying to say with that? Which leads into the other question I had. this, at least to me, this story seems like it's just one giant metaphor for not letting your creativity die. Not even necessarily your creativity, but to not remove all the aspects of yourself, to not separate yourself and compartmentalize yourself.
Yes, I see that.
You see that?
Yeah.
That's really strongly what it said to me at the end, because it was the artist, the one who was supposed to try things, supposed to find the hidden talents, supposed to do all the other stuff. Whether or not she was good at it kind of seems irrelevant, because it turned her into this well-rounded, good person.
One who wasn't afraid to try things and fail.
Yeah.
Whereas the actual Lulabelle was very much afraid to try stuff and fail. That's why she split off a version of herself to go and do that.
To go and do that for her.
Yeah.
So yeah, like they call her the artist, not the trial and error girl, right?
Yeah.
So it just leans strongly into like the creativity. Don't let that die.
Go figure, an author writing about how creativity is an important aspect of yourself. But further to that, though, I feel like there's also... This is a very weirdly existential book about a person faced with uncovering different portions of themselves and then kind of being put in a position to decide which of them get to live and which of them get to die.
Yeah.
Look at some of the ones who do die. The party girl, the vapid party girl who just goes to social events all the times. The one who's just jet setting around.
And the vapid party girl who was miserable.
Yeah. The one who's working for Spencer. Like, the ones who all die are not happy for the most part, it seems.
Well, some of them we didn't really get to meet. The brunch lady we didn't really get to meet.
But I mean, 13 even says, like, the look on her face was almost like sweet release.
Yeah.
When she died.
The travel one we didn't get to meet, she died from a distance.
Yes.
I can only speak from my experience. Traveling all the time would be exhausting and stressful.
The Model L, the clothes horse.
Oh, yes, the Model L.
Like, these were all very utilitarian portraits that didn't really have lives.
No,
they just had
very
functions.
Yeah, very singular purpose.
And they all end up dead and all almost are gleeful for it.
Yeah, we're very unhappy in their lives.
Yeah, with the exception of Prudence. She is the one exception to that.
Now, Prudence was an interesting one because she accepted her death was coming like everybody else.
Did she, though? Because she attacked 13.
Well, I was going to get there. I honestly can't tell. Based on the conversation that they were having, I don't know if she was actually happy in her life. Yes, she had a husband and kids, but she was so scared that they were going to forget her or not think of her or not remember her correctly even. Was she actually happy with them?
Well,
did she find her life fulfilling?
And that's actually a very good question because at the end of the day, she was made to go and marry him.
Yeah.
Like that was her function. That was her purpose. It's not something she chose to do. It's something she was sent to do.
That is an excellent point.
And so you bring up an excellent question. Was she happy?
She didn't seem like it.
She did have a closet full of Lulabelle rock stuff. So maybe she did resent being the one who was left behind.
Maybe. And then that's interesting because on the other side of it, you know that Lulabelle hates her so much for getting something that she didn't get. That she didn't get. And so neither of them are happy because neither of them got everything they wanted.
I mean, Lulabelle number 1 at the end even says, having a happy ending is not on my schedule.
Which is so sad.
Kinda, yeah.
This book is so beautiful and so dark and horrible at the same time.
On the flip side, you look at the Lulabelles who survive. I mean, yeah, Lulabelle number 1 is not necessarily the best case study for this, but 13 kind of fledged into a person, partly because of the influence of the artist who did turn into a person, who kind of evolved beyond her singular purpose, her function.
Yeah.
And started to have a life.
Yeah, all on her own.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she's like practically the only portrait who did. Like even Belle just spent her whole life preparing to survive. She was following her function.
Yeah. What a weird function to have.
It's kind of sad. But at the other end of it, we end up with the artist in 13 and a new Lulabelle rock. So
I hope they're happy.
I also hope they're happy.
I
We forgot about the Gossip Girl, too.
Oh, yes. Right. The social media girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and the social media girl. There were a couple. The artist had a life, and 13 is discovering a life.
Because of her, yeah.
Partly because of the artist.
See, that's why it's so beautiful.
Yeah. And love it or hate it, Lulabelle Rock has a life.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Now that all of the other portraits are either dead or gone, I truly wonder if Lulabelle will again have a life. Because now all the stuff that the portraits were doing,
She has to do herself.
she's going to have to do herself.
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe,
She'll be a better person
she'll
for
be
it.
a better person for it, and she will have a life that she enjoys.
Hard to say. But
Right?
it's
'Cause
possible.
partying 24/7, yeah, that would be misery.
But going to a party from time to time
Would be wonderful.
would be wonderful.
Right? Walking the catwalk constantly, just being a model, just swapping out clothes and just displaying them, would be so hollow after a little while. But you know what? I bet it's fun sometimes.
From time to time, sure.
Right?
Traveling
Exactly.
on a press junket.
Right?
Probably a nice
Go
way
see
to
the
see
world
some
and
places.
then go
Yeah.
home and relax. Live your life like a real, actual person.
Which she hasn't been doing because
No.
she's been fobbing off some of this living to other people.
Exactly.
And what was she doing with the time she was saving? It's not even clear.
No.
Mostly it seems like she was just holed up at her villa, not doing anything.
Not doing anything. Yeah. So who knows? Maybe I've just written myself a happy ending in my own head.
She now has the freedom to actually live a life.
Yeah. And now she can be Lulabelle Rock.
Maybe that was why she needed to get rid of all the portraits in the first place. Maybe all of the portraits were the friends we made along the way.
Somewhere in my head, I was like, oh my God, I think I just solved the book.
But having solved the book, perhaps it's time to make that movie?
Ooh, sure. Cast that movie. Here's the thing. I would not make this into a movie.
I know you've said.
This is a limited series. Not even a season. This is a series. This is a mini-series. This is 13 episodes.
Yeah, I could see that. I think you could compress it down into a satisfying movie because the chapters clip by at a fairly good pace.
I think you could. I wouldn't want to.
If Scott Pilgrim can defeat 7 evil X's in a film, 13 can defeat 12 Lulabelle Rocks in a film. I'm just saying.
Yes, but again, I think if you turn this into a miniseries, you could really, truly explore each and every Lulabelle to a certain degree.
Yeah, you could.
You obviously couldn't do like a direct adaptations, right?
I think it would be a fun live action thing, mainly because, number one, I think that you could do some really fun compositing to make Bubble City really pop visually. Number two, I think it would be a fun challenge for an actor to play all of the facets of Lulabelle.
To play all of the Lulabelles, yeah.
I don't know who specifically off the top of my head I would cast, and I think that it would be interesting to see them play against themselves.
That's the thing. Watching an actor play against themselves is always fun. I always had a problem playing Cast That Movie because I'm not a casting director, and I just don't have a list in my head of people who I would like to see for roles. What I usually do is find an actor I really like and then imagine good roles for them.
Yeah.
Not the other way around. I agree with you that this would make a fantastic live action. Watching someone play off themselves in a very like Orphan Black-esque kind of way, right?
Yeah.
But given the nature of the setting, I also think it would make a fascinating anime.
Kind of like one of those Netflix cyberpunk
Kind of, yeah.
ones. Yeah.
Right? Like that's really the feel that Bubble City gave me. And I can't help but imagine how flashy it would look as a modern day anime. Like the kind of cool stuff you could do to tell this fascinating story about this person encountering a different version of themselves over and over and over again.
If only Satoshi Kon
Oh
were still
my
around.
God. Can you imagine what Satoshi Kon would have done with this?
If you've not seen Millennium Actress, go see Millennium Actress.
Anything by Satoshi Kon. Some
Perfect
of it's
Blue.
Some of it's real dark, but
Yeah.
it's all fascinating
It's great
and
stuff.
gorgeous. And
He was gone too soon.
did I say dark? Dark.
Yeah. And actually would, if you were going to make an anime, would be the perfect director to have tapped for this.
Yeah.
But, alas.
Oh, pity.
Well, with that said, we come to the end of 13 Ways to Kill Lulabelle Rock by Maud Woolf. And it was a good book.
Maud Woolf, I absolutely loved your book.
Yeah, it was a good one. Quite enjoyed it. And hopefully we've picked out another good book to enjoy next.
I am Nita excited over this next book. Here comes the blurb. Dany Poissant is the daughter and former accomplice of the world's most famous art thief. There was no job too big for Maria and her loyal crew. The secret to their success? A little thing called magic, kept rigorously secret from the non-magical world. They seemed unstoppable, until a teenage Dany turned her mother over to the FBI. 10 years later, with Maria still in prison, Dany finds herself approached for a job that only Maria and her crew could pull off, if any of them were still speaking to her. But it's the job of a lifetime, and it might just be the lure Dany needs to reconcile with her mother and be reunited with her mother's old gang, including both the love of her life and her former best friend. The problem is, it's an impossible task, even with the magical talents of the people she once considered family backing her up. It's a heist that needs a year to plan, and Dany has just over a week. Worse, the more Dany learns, the more she understands that there's far more at stake in this job than she ever realized.
Please join us as we begin a chapter-by-chapter read-through of The Frame-Up by Gwenda Bond.
We're reading a heist, everybody. I'm so excited.
A magical fantasy heist.
Oh.
Well, an urban fantasy heist.
I genuinely don't know if I've ever said this on the podcast, but it is no secret to anybody who knows me. I love a good heist. Heist movies are some of my most favorites.
And we have not read a heist.
No, I am thrilled.
So you'll want to pick up a copy wherever fine books can be found, either an ebook or a physical copy. It should be readily available. It's recently published.
Yeah, 2024.
And then you'll want to read up on chapter 1 in time for next week because we're going to dive right in.
Yeah.
In the meantime, of course, you can always give us a little rating and a review on your podcatcher of choice.
Because we appreciate those.
Yes. You can also reach out to us on social media.
Oh, we have Instagram, Facebook, Blue Skies, and Goodreads. Not in that order. We are at The Read Along on most of them.
Pretty much all of them. You can also send us an email.
Oh, please do. We would love to get some email. You can reach us at thereadalong@gmail.com.
And with that said, as always, we love you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Magical heist!
Thank you for joining us on The Read Along with your hosts, Anita and Scott Bourgeois. All Read Along music is by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. Cover art is by Aaron Beaver. Be sure to join us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Read Along, and check out our group on Goodreads.com.